Nestled on the edge of a small, unassuming town was an old boarding house. Once a grand Victorian mansion, it had long since fallen into disrepair. Paint peeled from its weathered walls, windows were covered in grime, and the garden was overgrown with weeds. Despite its dilapidated state, it still attracted tenants, mostly college students and young professionals, drawn by its low rent and proximity to the town's amenities. One rainy autumn afternoon, 3 new tenants moved into the boarding house. Emily, a determined college student, had secured a small room on the 2nd floor. Her friends, Mark and Sarah, rented rooms nearby, hoping to support each other through the semester. They had heard the rumors but dismissed them as mere superstition. Their landlord, Mr. Thompson, was a gruff man in his 60s. He gave them a brief tour of the house, pointing out the shared kitchen, communal bathroom, and the creaky stairs that led to their rooms. He mentioned nothing of the house's eerie past, but his eyes held a certain wariness, as if he knew more than he let on. The first few nights passed without incident. Emily, Mark, and Sarah settled into their routines, attending classes during the day and studying in their rooms at night. But as the week went on, they began to notice odd occurrences. Emily was the first to experience something strange. One night, as she was studying for an upcoming exam, she heard faint whispers coming from the hallway. At first, she thought it was Mark or Sarah, but when she opened her door, the hallway was empty. The whispers stopped as soon as she stepped outside her room, leaving her puzzled, a little uneasy. Mark, too, encountered something unsettling. He often stayed up late working on his art project, using the quiet of the night to focus. One evening, as he was sketching by the light of his desk lamp, he felt a cold breeze sweep through his room. The windows were shut, and there was no logical explanation for the draft. Shivering, he pulled on a sweater, couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was watching him. Sarah's experience was perhaps the most alarming. She had always been sensitive to the paranormal, and from the moment she moved into the boarding house, she felt an oppressive presence. One night, she woke to find a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed. She froze, her heart pounding, as the figure slowly dissolved into the darkness. Trembling, she turned on every light in her room and stayed up until dawn, unable to sleep. The next day, Sarah confided in Emily and Mark, describing her terrifying encounter. To her surprise, they both shared their own experiences. Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, they decided to investigate the house's history. They started by asking Mr. Thompson about the previous tenants. He was reluctant to talk, but after some persuasion, he revealed that many had left abruptly, spooked by strange happening. He admitted that the house had a reputation for being haunted, though he himself had never experienced anything out of the ordinary. Undeterred, the friends visited the local library, searching for any information about the house's past. They found old newspaper articles detailing its history. It was built in the late 1800s by a wealthy businessman named Henry Blackwood. Blackwood was known for his eccentricities and had amassed a vast fortune through questionable means. Rumors swirled that he dabbled in the occult, using dark rituals to protect his wealth and ensure his family's prosperity. The most disturbing article described a tragedy that occurred in the house. In the early 1900s, Blackwood's daughter, Eliza, mysteriously disappeared. Her body was never found, and it was believed that she had been sacrificed as part of one of her father's rituals. Shortly after her disappearance, Blackwood went mad and was committed to an asylum, where he spent the rest of his days raving about the curse he had brought upon his family. Armed with this knowledge, Emily, Mark, and Sarah returned to the boarding house with a sense of dread. They theorized that Eliza's restless spirit was responsible for the strange occurrences, and that the curse Blackwood had unleashed still lingered in the house. Determined to free Eliza's spirit and lift the curse, they decided to perform a cleansing ritual. They gathered sage, candles, and a book of old incantations they had found at the library. That night, as the wind howled outside and rain lashed against the windows, they began the ritual. They started in the basement, the darkest and most foreboding part of the house. As they lit the sage and candles, the air grew thick with tension. Emily read aloud from the book of incantations, her voice steady but filled with trepidation. Mark and Sarah held hands, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of Eliza. As the ritual progressed, the temperature in the basement plummeted. Their breath fogged in the cold air, and an oppressive darkness seemed to close in around them. Suddenly, the candles flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. Emily's voice faltered, and a deep, malevolent growl echoed through the basement. Panicking, they fumbled for their flashlights. When the beams cut through the darkness, they saw her. Eliza's ghostly figure standing before them. Her eyes were hollow, face twisted in anguish. She reached out, her fingers like claws, and spoke in a voice that sent chills down their spines. "You cannot break the curse," she whispered. "He will not let you." Before they could react, the ground beneath them began to tremble. The walls shook, and a deafening roar filled the basement. The friends scrambled to escape. The spirit's presence was overwhelming. Just when it seemed they would be trapped forever, Emily remembered a final line from the incantation, an appeal to a higher power for protection. With all her strength, she shouted the words, voice cutting through the chaos. A blinding light enveloped them, and the oppressive darkness was driven back. When the light faded, Eliza was gone, and the basement was silent once more. Gasping for breath, friends hurried upstairs. The house seemed different, lighter, as if a great weight had been lifted. They knew they had not banished the curse entirely, but they had given Eliza some measure of peace. The next day, they decided to leave the boarding house. Mr. Thompson, seeing the determination in their eyes, did not try to dissuade them. As they packed their belongings, they couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. But this time, it was not a malevolent presence. It was Eliza, silently thanking them for their efforts. Years later, Emily, Mark, and Sarah would look back on their time at the old boarding house with a mixture of fear and awe. They had faced something truly terrifying and survived. And though they had moved on with their lives, they knew that the curse of the old boarding house would remain with them forever, a dark chapter in their shared history. As for the boarding house, it continued to stand, a relic of a bygone era. New tenants came and went, each with their own stories of strange occurrences. But the legend of the curse endured, a reminder that some spirits are not so easily laid to rest.